Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, and welcome to Film Journeys with Nathan Jones. This is week 28 of my own film journey, where I've been writing down, I don't have the book in front of me, and also journaling here on YouTube, the things that I've been watching and also the things that I've been picking up. And on top of that, recently I've been reading a lot, so we'll talk about that today as well. But I hope everyone is enjoying their first week of February. The world is a little bit wild at the moment, and I just want to say I hope people come here to find some peace for what they're doing in their day. And I know for sure for me, this is something that I do to keep myself sane and this kind of just really crazy time that we live in. But obviously, art and mediums like this are something that I hope that a lot of people go to in times of crisis like this. So, that being said, all that craziness going on, it's been a wild week, honestly. I haven't been able to watch as much as I have planned on watching. There's just been a lot of just busy times right now. And but at the same time, I do have a few things to talk about. So, and I also did get a little bit of a haul, some books and a couple of movies, just because I decided to treat myself. And so we'll talk about that here in a second. But before we jump over to the different section over here of my video, where I kind of talk about that haul and also the things that I've been picking up and the things that I've been watching, I would love to know in the comment section down below, what have you been doing for the week? Now that February is here, do you have any big plans for any type of projects that you want to do? I know for me, I'm going to jump into more David Lynch. I'm still going to do more folk horror stuff. I also have a couple other projects I'll talk about here in a second. But yeah, I'm excited to hear about what you're doing for the week, and be on the lookout for some more film journeys. Those are coming along the way. I'm dealing with some computer stuff and trying to just download different big files to transfer over. My computer, by the way, the one that I added this stuff on, is quite old, so it's about time that I get a new computer. So with that being said, I'll see you here in a second. Let's go talk about the things that I picked up, and then we'll jump back over here. All right, so now we're jumping over here to the things that I picked up for the week, and I actually got a mini haul here. And some of you might know this if you've been following the film journey for a couple of weeks recently, but I have been reading quite a bit for January, honestly. I stopped reading maybe early part of 2024. I just kind of wasn't feeling the itch to read, but now I feel very much the bug too. So I'm actually on book 6, which is kind of insane. And don't worry, for people who follow this for the film journey, a lot of these are just adaptations. So they are related to films, and I will be talking about the films later as well, because I have a lot of different genres that I really like to read, but a lot of the times it's really just, fiction or nonfiction in terms of a lot of these adaptations for films, or at least the film is the adaptation of the book. That's 99% of the time how that is. But also, there's a couple of other books I'll talk about as well as we go along this journey, because it's not just a film journey, it's just kind of a medium journey of different things. But recently, I just read Jurassic Park for the first time, which, by the way, I will be talking about here in another section of the video. But this actually segues to some more Michael Crichton, I think that's how you say his name, books that I picked up. And so let me show you those real quick. And so naturally, as I was reading Jurassic Park, I had to pick up The Lost World, of course. That's what I'm currently reading right now. And then I also picked up Timeline, which is another, I guess, adaptation. This became a movie, which I barely remember. At least I watched the trailer, and I remember the movie poster from like the early 2000s. But this is something that I know that the movie is not good. We'll see if I watch it, but I've heard this is a really good sci-fi book right here, just about time travel and some different things going on with science. And speaking of science, holy crap, these two in general are very, very well researched, especially for the times that these guys came out. But I'm excited to watch. I keep saying that all the time. Excited to read The Lost World, because I really, really enjoyed Jurassic Park. Reading that, it was a horrifying book. Also, I had just mentioned the science aspect of it. I mean, there's so much data and so much research you can tell put into the effort of care, but also just see, the different characters kind of interact within that. And I really like that type of reading. I like reading kind of the back and forth there. And obviously, I was already a little bit familiar with Jurassic Park, and And so going into something like this for, The Lost World is something that I'm really excited about, because I've heard it's very different from the movie adaptation that came out. Obviously, I'm a huge Jurassic Park fan. Ever since I was a kid, most boys, especially at my age, and also probably now, still love dinosaurs. And so, of course, things like this are really exciting. And so I'm a little late to the party to read these adaptations, but I'm really excited to read this and then eventually read this as well, because, again, I like this writing, and so I've been told to read this, and I'm definitely going to do that. And I'll probably watch the silly movie too, but we'll talk about this here in a second. But I also got some movies, so don't worry, I'm still talking about film. And those two films that I picked up, one is from A24, one that I just recently been wanting to watch. I didn't watch this in theaters, and I'm really kind of sad that I didn't. But I have it physically on Blu-ray now, and it is Heretic. And there he is right there, Hugh Grant, being a wild guy right here with Sophie Thatcher and also Chloe East. This looks terrifying. It's definitely a story that I don't know too much about. I just remember watching the trailer and being very intrigued by it. But it definitely has a guy who has these two girls who come over, just kind of, one of those, how like Seventh-day Adventists or people in the States, if people come to your door talking about the Bible, or like knocking on just to talk about God for some reason, giving you pamphlets and stuff like that. Well, they meet Hugh Grant in here, and something awry happens within the house. So I don't really know too much about it, but it seems really sinister, seems really fun to kind of see this. And then also just, I know that he's probably having a terrific fun time playing this this role that Hugh Grant's in. So I'm really excited to check this out. So yeah, excited to finally have this. The other thing I got was one that I didn't realize was not on streaming services anymore. And it's one of Mike Flanagan's kind of earlier works, and one of his best known films that he had on Netflix, and that is Hush. I got this on 4K. I really, really love this movie. This is a movie that's a home invasion that's absolutely terrifying. Very similar to something like The Strangers, if anyone's seen that movie, and how realistic a lot of that is. It's just really scary, especially coming from a guy who lives by himself. It can be a little nerve-wracking, but Hush was a movie that I really, really enjoyed. This one is about a writer who is deaf. She lives out in like the woods, very much in a cabin by herself. Not in a cabin, I guess, a really nice house. It looks really nice, but there's a lot of glass. And then there's this guy who is pretty much stalking her, trying to get in the house. And yeah, it's a wild one. But I knew this movie needed to get on physical media because, like I said, it got taken off streaming services, and that's something that I'm definitely a little bit more honed in on, especially with how companies are doing that left and right. But stuff like Hush, I'm really, really excited to rewatch and finally have on physical media. But this is the Shout Factory, Scream Factory 4K edition. There's actually a lot of stuff in here. I think there's 4 discs in here. Yeah, Hush, really great movie. Terrifying one. And definitely don't recommend watching this at night by yourself. But if you must, definitely watch Hush. And yeah, excited for Heretic as well. But yeah, that's the stuff that I picked up for the week. I got some books. I'm clearly reading right now, which has been a lot of fun. So besides that, I've also been watching a lot of television shows and a couple of movies, and then some related to what we just talked about. But let's go over to the closet again and talk about that. And now we're back over here to talk about the things that I've been watching for the week and also reading. We'll talk about that here in a second. But I do want to go back a couple of weeks ago where I had read Cary Elwes, who is Wesley in The Princess Bride, talking about his time making that movie, and also just talking about like the pretty much the production side of it, also just getting cast for it. Terrified of the part, and also one of his favorite books that he read as he was growing up. And so he was able to be a part of it. And so, of course, naturally, I watched The Princess Bride, which is one of my favorite films of all time. This is from 1987, which is one of the best film years of all time. Probably one of my favorites. Predator came out that year, so did this. There's so many movies that I love in this year, but in particular, The Princess Bride has stayed with me ever since I was a kid. Very much like a certain young boy in here, maybe Mr. Savage, who is being read a bedtime story or this fantasy story by his grandfather Peter Falk. Kind of reminds me of my own grandfather and how we interacted. He never read me any stories per se, but regardless, reading Cary Elwes' time on set was just fantastic. He had so many great memories, especially with like Andre the Giant, Mandy just being hounded constantly, learning how to fence, just being in awe of Robin Wright, and just also just Rob Reiner in general, and Christopher Guest, and there's just so many people involved in this movie that everyone seemed to have such a good time making it. Maybe a few people had a little bit of an idea, like Wallace Shawn talked a lot about how he kind of envisioned Danny DeVito as his own character. At least he was being shopped around as that character, and that would have been an interesting one, but I'm glad that Wallace Shawn took it over. But anyway, I'm divulging. I rewatched this movie. It's a perfect movie. It's a fantasy, of course. It's a movie that's a romance, swashbuckling action, horror even, and then so many things going on in this movie in the background. But it's just an adventure film. But it's also a romance at the heart of it. And it stayed with me all these years, but also it just lives on to this day. And I love this movie, and I love that book. And so, of course, I had to rewatch this. And so, speaking of books, obviously, I just talked about, Princess Bride. Let's now talk about Jurassic Park again. This book, holy moly, I kind of mentioned it over there, but I just love the way this was written. I really love the attention to detail and to the science that was involved in it. And especially I think this came out in 1989. I could be wrong on that one, but regardless, obviously the adaptation is very different. Steven Spielberg, amazing movie, which by the way, I don't have in front of me, but I'm definitely watching that here shortly because I'm definitely in that mindset as I'm reading The Lost World, of course, as well. But I really love the different character adaptations and then the different situations that happen. There's so many things in this book that are horrifying to read out loud and kind of picture. You can kind of envision the terror that's happening, especially with the kids and Dr. Grant. Man, they are getting chased to death by this T-Rex in this book, and very horrifying moments. And same with the Velociraptors; they're also terrifying. And you get John Hammond, who is a completely different person in the story, kind of the villain of the book. But I just love, and there's also a lot of deaths that happen that don't happen necessarily in the adaptation from Spielberg. But yeah, this was an incredible read, and obviously I'm late to the party here, but this is a must-read in my opinion, especially if you're into science fiction. Also, if you're into paleontology, horror, this is the kind of stuff that I think people should read. So this was like my first, fictional book of the year, and I could not be any disappointed. This is an amazing time. Highly recommend it. And also watch the movie, of course, which I'm going to do soon because that's also a masterpiece. So the other movie that I watched this week, which again, I haven't watched too much, I watched Princess Bride. I also watched this little bad boy, El Grande Silencio, which is The Great Silence. It's a Western. I was able to show my friend who hasn't seen this movie before, this amazing Western. This is from Eureka. This is the Region B release of the film. So if you don't have a Region B player, I'm sorry about that, but this movie is a must watch. This is one of the best spaghetti westerns of all time. Sergio Corbucci has directed this film. It also has the great cast of Jean-Louis Trintignant and Klaus Kinski, so a French and a German guy in this Italian production, all about shot in Utah, and during this great massacre in the late 1880s, and this heavy snow in the background. This was definitely an inspiration for someone like Tarantino to make The Hateful Eight, and a lot of westerns that would come after this one. But this movie, I think, came out in 1968. Yes, it's an Italian and French production. I believe they shot this in the Alps, but it is set in Utah during this time. And it's in Spanish, or not in Spanish, it's in Italian. It's got that dub. I think there's definitely different versions of this, but I definitely wanted to watch the original. And this is one that is a cold movie. I'm not going to get too in depth with the plot, but we have Jean-Louis as this silent man, hence The Great Silence, who is pretty much one of the frontier justice protectors of things that are a little bit right and wrong on the the frontier, but also there's a lot of bounty hunters out there. That includes Klaus Kinski's character, who are pretty much just there's pretty lawless, and there's a lot of blood. There's a lot of standoffs, and it's also just a gorgeous watch. And again, I'm not going to give anything away, but man, this is one of the craziest movie endings I've ever seen in my life. But this movie, well worth watching. 4.5 out of 5. It easily might be a 5 out of 5 for me eventually, but man, oh man. A grande silencio, one fantastic time. Now let's transition to TV. I actually watched the first season and a half of this show that I'm about to talk about, and that is Channel Zero, which this is an anthology series, so this came out on the Sci-Fi Channel, which I haven't had for a long time because, I don't have cable. I haven't had that in like over maybe 12, 14, 15 years, something like that. But regardless, this came out, I guess, in the late 2010s and up until about 2020, I think. But these are different stories here and are really, really an amazing kind of hodgepodge of these different creepypastas, I guess is what it's based off of. But Candle Cove is what I watched, and then I also am halfway through No End House, which that's a trip of a TV show, but Candle Cove is really good too. Candle Cove is quite a terrifying one, especially for like children, because this is about a story of this television program that happened, I think, I want to say the late 70s or the early 80s, to these kids, where they would come on at these random times of day, and this kind of odd but like staticky, kind of off kilter, definitely off-putting type of like hand puppetry, and like moving some of these characters, and they're like talking to the kids like specifically. A lot of weird stuff happens in this town. It's definitely have like a little bit of a Stephen King vibe, especially when it comes to the ways that these kids are pretty much not believed, because like, how do these kids keep disappearing? And there's this event that happened many years around that time, like I said, the late 70s, early 80s, where one of our main character comes back, having been a part of what happened, but not really remembering what exactly happened. He had a twin brother, and you kind of figure out what happens with them as the show progresses. It's 6 episodes, and it's perfect. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. It's, a solid like 50-minute episode, and it's definitely worth watching. No End House right now is also really good. This is actually about a bunch of teenagers who go into this house. This house just shows up. Does not normally, it's not in one particular spot, but it definitely has different dimensions to it. And the rules of this house is there's 6 doors that you have to go through, these different exit doors, and it'll lead you into other worlds of sorts. And some really weird doppelganger stuff starts happening in here. And I love that kind of stuff because it definitely reminds me a little bit like Twin Peaks, which we'll talk about here in a second, because the show that I'm watching right now, the other one, very, very Twin Peaksy. But yeah, I'm really enjoying No End House. I'm on episode 4 right now, so I'm kind of in the middle of it. But yeah, I definitely recommend people checking out Channel Zero. This is a show that I think people don't talk about enough, because I didn't really get much exposure for it. But this definitely, if you're a fan of a lot of horror and these really interesting, intriguing concepts, don't be turned off that it's a Sci-Fi original channel, because this is actually really well done. So yeah, check out Channel Zero. I'll talk about that, I'm sure, here in the coming weeks. But I mentioned Twin Peaks a little earlier, and right now I'm watching a show that a lot of people are watching the 2nd season of, and I just mentioned this last week because I just picked it up finally, but I'm finally watching Severance, and I just finished the first 3 episodes of Severance, and boy oh boy does this look fun. I mentioned Twin Peaks because there's definitely this unsettling thing going on in the background of these characters. I don't feel like I'm an expert on this show, so I want to say that before, jumping into this, because I know a lot of you probably have seen the show or are watching it right now, so you know a lot more about it than I do. But initial thoughts, I'm really enjoying the acting. Of course, Adam Scott is our main character, who is definitely doesn't know where he is in and out of. He's definitely slipping, because there's this procedure that happens in the show, if you are not familiar, where severance happens when you kind of go between your work day and your outside self. And so this severance procedure kind of cuts that off, so you can have that separated. And this very corporate, corporate side of Adam Scott's character goes in to this very small group, but very maze-like place, where the company that he works with, the corporation that he works with, that definitely something is a little off with it. And you can definitely tell with his boss, is like Robin Wright, who I just mentioned with Princess Bride. So many years have passed since then, but she's still beautiful as ever. As her, very, off-settling kind of boss for Adam Scott's character, who is also just kind of a dummy, but at the same time trying to figure out what's going on. And that's really endearing to see that. But then there's, this office mates who are also there, and various levels of like commitment to this really insane kind of concept of working and then severing yourself from that outside self. And so these pieces are coming together a little bit, and I really love the geometry of this show. It's shot very, very well, but it also feels very cold. Hence the Twin Peaks thoughts as I'm watching this, but I'm really enjoying it so far. Gonna report back on this as I watch more and more of it. But yeah, anyway, I'm reading a lot, I'm watching some television, watching some movies, doing a lot of things for the week. But what about you? I would love to know in the comment section down below what you've been watching. Tonight, I'm actually going to the Alamo to watch Nickel Boys, which I'm really excited to watch. And that's something that I will talk about next time. But I'm sure the next video that I put out will be one where I'm doing a film journey, so with another guest, so be sure to check out that. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a like, comment down below, share, hit the notification bell, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.